I was thinking about something today, and it's something that it comes up in conversation a lot with friends, family, people I work with. It's politics, right? And it's so emotional, and people have such strong opinions and views, and it just occurs to me that like there's a problem, and I'm not the only one seeing it. Of course, I'm sure you have too, right? Like there's just this huge divide in our country. It started with politics, and now seems like our very society itself, is divided now. And it's along political lines, but they're not very clearly drawn lines, and it's tearing us apart. And it's not a U.S. phenomenon. It's happening all across the world. Europe is experiencing this as well. You can go on to like Freedom House and some other websites like that. These organizations are really just trying to collect information on freedom and democracy and what that really means, and it's ostensibly objective, right? It's not tied to one political party or another. It's tied to the idea of freedom and democracy, which I guess in and of itself could be contentious for some, right? But if we do acknowledge that there is a divide, and we seem to be getting, like, people are actually talking about civil war, right? Like, it's gotten to that level where that idea, that thought of civil war has just become, like, it's okay to talk about that as a realistic or a probable outcome of the way things are headed. And for all I know, it might come to that. Who knows? I mean, I certainly hope it doesn't. That would mean, just an immense loss of life. And, hopefully it won't come to that. So we've identified the problem, which seems easy, which seems simple, right? We think we've noticed what the problem is. So we might say that it's society, or we might say that it's politics, or we might say that it's our ultra-conservative aunts and uncles, or it might be our super liberal friends, or people in big cities. Like, however you choose to framework or conceptualize this, right? That's where the problem is. And that's like our default tendency, is to see the problem as like out here. Like, it's those people, it's that political party, it's those extremists, it's my backwards thinking aunts and uncles or older generations, or it's these radical liberal and perhaps even, revolutionary younger generations. It's like the problem is always out there. And I want to make something clear, right? I'm politically agnostic. I've run the whole spectrum. I've been an extremist on both sides. I've been a nihilist, which, if you've seen the movie, it is exhausting. There's a shout out to my friend Tim. But, so I'm politically agnostic. I have nothing to gain from promoting either side, so I'm going to try not to do either. And if you sense any of that, please let me know. Comment down below. But the whole point here, right, is if we acknowledge that there's a problem, and then we also acknowledge that the general tendency, the natural default tendency for us, is to look out there for the source of the problem. What if instead we pause for a moment and say, okay, maybe the problem is or is not out there. I'm sure there are many problems out there, right? But I can't do anything about that, right? I can't force you or my aunt and uncles or younger generations or whoever it is. I can't force them to change. And I'm seeing this on Facebook, right? I've gone through this with some loved ones and some friends, and I've tried to convince them, and I've tried to engage in sometimes very one-sided debate, and then others where like I really am trying to meet them halfway, and but at the end of the day, I can't convince them. I can't bring them over to my side. So that's not going to happen. It's just not. The only way I can force somebody to believe or to act the way I want usually comes to some form of coercion or violence. That's it. That's all I've got left. But there is another way to bring about change, and that's within me. Like my perspective, the way I view the world. I need to put on a new pair of glasses, so to speak, when confronting a problem. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to go inward. And I want to take stock of my life. Like, where am I in all of this? How am I participating and entering into this problem? Am I making it better? Am I making it worse? What are some of the things that I've been taught, that I may have been programmed with, right? And that's what I'm entering into this problem with. And I'm not taking those things into consideration. So if I take stock honestly about where I'm at, right? So I might call this like an internal inventory, and see exactly what's going on within me. Now I'm starting to get closer to the problem, right? Because the problem is a matter of perception, right? And if my perception, if the way I view the world and its people is skewed, then the way I interact with that is also going to be skewed, and it's going to be tainted a certain way. So I'm going to put on my different pair of glasses, right? And I'm going to look at my life, and this is just a general example. Some of these are actually me. Some of these are what I've learned from people that I've worked with. But see if any of these resonate with you, right? And even now, if you want, go ahead and pause a moment before I get to some of the meat and potatoes, some of the basics of what came out of me and what I've seen and observed from other people. It's a simple concept to like go in and look at these things, right? But it's not easy. It's not going to be hard for me to see where I am at in all of this. It's not going to be easy for me to see where I am at in all of this. All right, so I really got to get honest with myself. So it means taking responsibility for my actions, my viewpoints, my opinions, and also like the very specific things I've done that have contributed to this problem, right? Because I'm not innocent in any of this. All right, and these are some of the things that I came up with. Again, from my own and from others. I have to be right. I have to be right, because if I'm not, then I cease to exist. I mean, think about that for a moment. If I'm not right about something, and I'm moving out with conviction, and then it turns out I'm not right, then everything I've thought, like the very substance of my being, especially with a hotly contended political issue, now it's like I cease to exist. It causes me to question the nature of my own reality, and that is not comfortable. So I can't be right. I'm going to fight against that at all. I mean, I can't be wrong, right? Let me think about this. If I'm wrong, it causes me to question the very nature of my reality. Right? And so I'm going to fight against being wrong at all costs. Even if there's a lurking notion in the back of my mind, I might be wrong about this. Right? So this is something that I've seen. And this is another very specific action that I've taken that's contributed and participated in the problem. I argue with friends and family, occasionally resorting to name calling. Right? As a result of something out there that for the most part has no bearing on my life. Like I'm not in that world all the time, and now the people closest to me, the people that I call families and friends, I'm arguing with them. I'm not having a passionate debate or an informed debate or like really trying to find a solution or an answer to these things. I'm coming in with my opinion, I'm arguing, I'm butting heads, and then I lose all sight of what's happening, and now I resort to name calling. I'm actually taking it personal and making it personal. I'm name calling, right? That's another way to participate in this problem. I dumped or cut off loved ones and people I care about. Wow. So as part of this problem, right, the divide is happening because everybody on this side is dumping and cutting their loved ones and their friends and family on this side, and vice versa, and all of a sudden, boom. Like that's the essence of the problem, this divide that's happening right now in our society, and even within our families and communities, for this very specific reason. Like, if this comes up in your inventory, then now you can see, wow, I'm directly responsible for the problem. Like, I am a part of this. I didn't cause it. Perhaps I did. I don't know. I don't know what your story is going to be. But I'm definitely participating in the problem. Now I'm getting down, like returning to that first question, identifying the problem. I'm beginning to see the problem is not out there. The problem isn't you. The problem isn't my parents or my aunts and uncles or this generation or this party or that party. It's me. Right now I'm getting down to some truth here. This is good stuff. I lied about how involved I am in my community and local government so that I could gain the upper hand in arguments. Wow, this is great. Like this little bit of truth shows how like now I'm corrupting my own moral character by being dishonest so that I can gain the upper hand in these arguments. Why? It kind of goes back to this first one. I have to be right. Because if I'm not right, at the end of the day, I begin to question the nature of my existence and my reality. So this also speaks to some of the things that are coming up, right, which is fear. There's a tremendous amount of fear in every single one of these. I am afraid of being oppressed, right? And this is sort of like a core issue within politics, right? You've got perhaps one side of the discussion saying if we have too much of this, then ultimately we'll lose it all and be oppressed. And then there might be another side who's saying, well, we have to have these certain things so that everybody can experience freedom, but the other side is oppressed. And it goes back and forth. Everybody is afraid of being oppressed. It's a legitimate, rational fear. It reaches back to the very foundations of what government means. How much is too much? This contractual obligation that's made between society and government, right? And there's tons of political theory around this stuff, which is really great to read. But it informs this self-knowledge and this inventory of fear of oppression. It's a natural fear. It's natural to fear this, right? I am afraid of losing what I have, and I'm afraid of not getting what I need to be secure and to be okay. Very close to oppression, right? But now it's actually getting a little bit more nuanced. Fear I'm going to lose what I already have. Fear I'm not going to get what I need for me and my family to be secure and okay. Again, this fear is touching very close to home, right? And when you activate fear, now you're in sort of a more of a primal stage, fight, flight, freeze, right? It engages these sort of primal instincts, which I can see in social media. I can see on the news, and you probably see it within your own discourse. I am afraid of losing control and the world going to hell in a handbasket. Well, that's kind of what this is all about, right? Fear of losing control, which control is a delusion anyways. I mean, if you really get into this, and we can certainly talk about this another time, but if I lose control or what I think is control over a situation, then that means I've given that power to you, so it's a loss of power, right? And a loss of power makes me feel, it goes back to this fear of if I don't have power, then what? What am I going to do? So a lot of this is fear, right? And now that we've gotten to sort of a fundamental understanding of what the problem is, it's fear. That's underneath all of this. We're all just a little bit afraid, or some of us a lot afraid, and I would go as far as to say this, right? From my experience with people, the ones who are most vocal, the ones who are most aggressive, the ones who are most opinionated about this kind of stuff are usually the ones that are most afraid. They're being driven by fear, and I get that because I've done it myself. Like I said, some of these are mine. So, you know, in the next section we're going to talk about, okay, so we've gone back to this first part, which is identifying the problem. So the problem isn't out there, it's inside me. And what is it specifically? It's fear. That's a little bit of truth that I didn't have before I started this process. And anybody can do this. This is so simple, right? And this is what I mean when I talk about exceptional living via integrated spirituality. Going inward and looking at this and talking about things like fear, that's spiritual and it's practical, right? It has such practical value, but we got to integrate it into our lives. And so that's what this is all about. Please post your comments, questions. You can tell me how crazy I am below, but I love to hear all of it. And again, you know, if you do this kind of inventory and you're brave enough to put it out there and post it in the comments section, please do, right? Because I'm sure, I'm hoping that some people like maybe identified with some of the things that I brought up in this particular inventory. But I'm sure there's a bunch here that I missed, right? And so if you want to post yours in the comments below, how you've participated in the problem, direct actions that you've taken. And remember, inaction is also an action. So if I withdraw from society, if I withdraw from my friends and my family because I just want to avoid it altogether, that too is an action. And actually, that's directly participating in the divide too, right? Because we lose those voices. Like as we pull apart, the people that isolate are sort of the crumbles that fall off into the abyss and we just don't hear from again. So we miss you, we love you, we want you to comment and down below and tell us how that's happening in your life. And now I'm not sure if I'm supposed to have some sort of